Hello, welcome to the Warframe Collective, and hey, today, let's cut the bullshit because Yareli is one of the best tanks in the game. Yareli is so damn good, I've been using her to do all kinds of in-game activities. So, this is the build we are running on Yareli. As you can see, this is a two-forma build, so the investment on her is pretty cheap, especially for one of the best tanks in the game. Now, the clutch mod in this build is going to be that Merlina's Guard, even though you don't need it at all. But what Merlina's Guard does is, every time I use my first ability and I kill an enemy, it heals Merlina. And if you don't know, as long as you're riding Merlina, you have 90% damage reduction. Also, Yareli's passive ability is critical flow, so as long as Yareli is in motion, she will get 200% critical damage increase. So we're going to be testing out this kit gun first, and then we're going to move on to some other weapons. Now I know I'm going to piss off of all of 57 Yareli mains out there, but this is her first ability, right? Her first ability is equivalent to something like a 2.5 times damage increase. It's basically like a built-in condition overload. So as you can see, I do 22 base damage and 120 crit damage with this unmodded weapon. This is an unmodded Latron, right? But if I use her first ability, that boosts my critical damage up to 355, and that boosts my base damage up to 61. So, as you can see, that is like a 2.5 times damage increase or some shit. So, we're going to start off with level 160 heavy gunners, and we're going to be using the Tomb Finger. I showed you guys the build already, and as you can see, the Tomb Finger does pretty decent against level 160 heavy gunners. But when you start moving and you get your critical flow passive buff, as you can see, that critical flow dramatically increases that damage bonus you get. So yeah, with critical flow, you make short work of these guys pretty quickly. And then on top of that, guys, did I mention that Yareli is thick as fuck? But we're going to be moving on to the gauze. Why am I using the gauze? Well, I'm using the gauze because the gauze is better than the Kuva Nucor. That's my hot take of the day. The gauze is better than the Kuva Nucor. It's a cheaper investment, and the Riven is going to cost you nothing. So, yeah, if you don't know, the gauze is better than the Kuva Nucor, and the gauze is basically a Kuva Nucor. It was the Kuva Nucor before the Kuva Nucor was the Kuva Nucor. But I'm going to be testing it out against these level 160 heavy gunners. And as you can see, the gauze pretty much melts these guys pretty quickly. This is not including the critical flow bust. This is just the base build of the gauze. So the gauze kills so fast that we're just going to have to start that over. And this time I'm going to move around, that way I have my critical flow buff. And as you can see, the damage is dramatically impacted by Yareli's critical flow buff. And did I mention, guys, that Yareli is thick as fuck? No, I'm just joking. But I'm not really joking. Anyway, guys, moving on. The one problem you're going to have when you're using beam weapons with Yareli is because that augment Merlina's Guard, it actually gives you increased fire rate. It doubles your fire rate and it increases your reload speed. That's going to make you eat through ammo really quickly. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but look at the damage reduction of Merlina gives you. This is just the damage reduction, and as I recast it, because they destroy Merlina, her Merlina acts kind of like Rhino Skin does. When you cast it, as you take damage in your invulnerability state, it determines the amount of extra health you will get, right? And as you can see, Yareli is fucking tanky as hell against level 160 heavy gunners. She can just kind of stand there. And so, as you can see, Yareli does not give a fuck about knockdowns, or I should say Merlina does not give a damn about knockdowns. So let me make sure I move so that way I have my critical flow buff. Another thing about beam weapons in Yareli is because you're moving around, beam weapons are kind of hard to land all on target. But even then, you can still absolutely use beam weapons with Yareli, but it's not optimal because you will run out of ammo so quickly. And we are going to show you that with the next part of the test. So, since Yareli is such a badass, we're just going to spawn in 160 leveled Eximus heavy gunners. And if you know anything about Eximus units, you know your abilities don't affect them. Having said that, Yareli's abilities absolutely do affect these guys before they go into their state where your abilities do affect them. You know how if you cut their shield bar to like half, you'll be able to use your abilities on them at that point? Well, Yareli's first ability affects these guys whether that bar is up or not. These guys will take extra damage from Yareli's first ability. And so the key here is just to keep casting Yareli's 1 and moving around so you have your critical flow buff and shoot these guys in the face. And as you can see, because of Merlina's guard augment, I have already run out of ammo because of the increased fire rate and the increased reload speed. So I can't even really continue fighting these guys. But as you can see, Yareli has no problem surviving. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to choose another weapon to patch that up. But having said that, if you're not using Merlina's guard, it's not a problem. So this is the Spore Lancer. The Spore Lancer is absolutely nuts, and it works even better in conjunction with Yareli's passive critical flow ability. So we're going to head out here. Once again, 20 level 160 heavy gunners. And you know those fire Eximus that can melt you in half a second? Well, Yareli doesn't give a fuck about those fire Eximus. She'll just run right through those motherfuckers. And as you can see, the knockback that Warframes normally suffer from the Spore Lancer is not even a thing as long as you're on Merlina. So, yeah, just keep moving around. That way you have your critical flow buff and shoot these guys in the face. And I neglected to... I kind of got negligent right there. You can absolutely still die. The thing is, you have to make sure when you use your first ability, you kill the enemies that are suspended by her first ability. Because what that's going to do is that's going to heal Merlina, and that's going to give you that fire rate bonus and reload speed buff. And so, even if you're facing 20 level 160 heavy gunners, which you're never going to be in that scenario unless you're in like the Eximus stronghold, and even then they're not going to be level 160. But just make sure you're using your first ability and make sure you kill the enemies that are suspended in the air by your first ability. That way you hear Merlina and you get that reload speed buff and that damage increase. So, I know what some of you guys are thinking, but Remo, this is the simulacrum. How does it actually work on the still path? Well, on the still path, it works even better because you're not going to be surrounded by 20 level 160 Eximus units. So we're going to head over to Mod Void real quick, and we're just going to run through here just to show you guys that Yareli has absolutely no problem surviving wherever she goes. So, remember I said the Spore Lancer has knockback. Well, I'm going to show you right here, right? If you're not on Merlina and you're shooting the Spore Lancer too close, you're gonna suffer that knockback. But as long as you're on Merlina, Merlina doesn't give a damn about knockback. There's a bunch of shit that Merlina doesn't give a fuck about, and we're gonna show you. So, as you can see, right, this is like the base traveling speed of Merlina. Merlina doesn't really give a damn about Corpus. There's a nullifier right there, but I could have skated directly through his bubble. And my fear is that people are gonna see this video and people are gonna start using Yareli because they're gonna realize how good Yareli actually is. And so right here, I've made my way to the capture target, right? I'm just gonna light this dude up like a Christmas tree real quick. I'm gonna throw out my one just so I can suspend any enemies that are nearby, and I'm gonna cap this dude. Oh yeah, you can cap objectives while you're still on Merlina with your damage reduction. And so yeah, you know those lasers that will knock you back. Yeah, fucking Merlina doesn't give a damn about lasers. Merlina does not care about lasers. She doesn't give a fuck about any knockback. So if you have a subsumed ability, you do have to deactivate Merlina in order to use your subsumed ability, because only Yareli's base abilities work while you're still on Merlina. And as you can see, this is Yareli's run speed while she's on her K drive. Yareli can absolutely move while she's on this thing, but I don't suggest you use your run speed because it's very fast in a single direction, but you have very little control over it. So I suggest you just keep her walking speed going. And I know what you're thinking, right? How does Yareli do against Acolytes? Well, Yareli does really good against Acolytes. Yareli doesn't give a damn about Acolytes, especially if you have that reload speed buff up. Yareli can just kind of melt these guys really quickly, assuming you have a pretty good secondary weapon. But what I will say is there's one Acolyte that will actually try to knock you off Merlina, and he can actually do it. I think it's the one that looks like Limbo. I forget his name, but he will actually knock you off your K drive. But even if he does do that, no worries, just activate it again. The only enemies that you really have to be paranoid when going up against, are like being in close proximity to, is those toxic ancients. Those toxic ancients can melt you in like pretty quickly. Like, for some reason, the toxic ancients are like the only enemy in the game that can really fuck with Yareli. And I know that's super random, because how often are you really going to be surrounded by toxic ancients with a high enough level to really be a problem for Yareli? But if you're on the still path, it's not a problem like that. But if you're on autopilot, not paying attention, and you find yourself next to one of these toxic ancients, or one of these fuckers runs up behind you, they can melt you pretty quickly. So keep that in mind. My fear is that when Yareli Prime comes out, all these Warframe players are going to hop on the Yareli bandwagon, and they're going to get Yareli nerfed. They're going to be like, oh, Yareli is absolutely insane. And so remember, guys, you heard it here first at the Warframe Collective. And remember, Yareli is thick as fuck. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, guys, have a great day. Peace.